An unwanted pregnancy forced me to get married. What I didn't expect was that my fiancé had deliberately caused it so his mistress could get a promotion to director. I didn't cry. I just made my move in silence. A few days later, he turned pale, seeing me in a power suit sitting in the director's office. I was frozen in front of the door to VIP room number 608, my hand clutching the cold keys to my Audi. My knuckles were white from the force of my grip. The hallway of the Aura Lounge was submerged in a dim haze of purple and red lights. The smell of stale tobacco mingled with an overly sweet air freshener, creating an atmosphere so suffocating it was nauseating. At this hour, I should have been at home, curled up under a warm blanket, sipping a soothing herbal tea specially blended for expectant mothers. But a 10 p.m. call from Jake, Damien's best friend, had pulled me out of the house. Jake had said Damien was too drunk to drive and asked me to come pick him up like a dutiful fiancé. And carrying his child in my womb, I didn't hesitate despite the biting wind of the New York City night. I hastily threw on a thick coat and drove over. I was about to push the door open when a shrill voice, amplified by the powerful speakers inside, seeped through the crack and nailed my feet to the cold marble floor. "Hey, Damien, I'm being serious." Jake's voice was slurred, clearly drunk as the clinking of glasses echoed. "You really planning on marrying that workaholic? That chick from marketing, Cora Lynn, is practically glued to you. She's a total knockout, man. It'd be a waste to let her go." My heart skipped a beat, not from excitement, but from a bad feeling, a premonition that something terrible was about to happen. I held my breath, pressed myself against the velvet-lined wall, and strained to listen. Then I heard Damien's familiar mocking laugh. That half-smile that I once found so masculine and seductive now sounded calculating and dismissive. "You think I'm stupid enough to walk into that cage for love?" Damien took a drag from a cigarette. His voice deepened, filled with self-satisfaction. "Aria is already 33. At that age, women are desperate for a husband and a kid like a desert waiting for rain." I just had to be a little attentive, say a few sweet things, and she swallowed it all. "So you're marrying her for the department director position, right?" Jake let out a loud laugh. "Of course. Why else?" Damien slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed dryly. "She's my strongest competitor for the upcoming appointment. Aria is no fool, and old man Harrison from the development firm trusts her completely. If I competed fairly, I'm not sure I could beat her, and Cora Lynn wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in hell." Outside, my entire body trembled, not from the cold but from a deep nausea rising from my stomach. The man I had loved for 2 years, the one who had knelt to propose just a month ago, turned out to see me as a chess piece, an obstacle to be removed. "You magnificent bastard, you're a strategist!" Applause mixed with the laughter of the group of men in the room. "And the pregnancy, I heard she's pregnant. Are you planning to raise another man's kid, or what's the deal?" "It's my kid. Whose else would it be?" Damien interrupted with a chillingly casual tone. But that was my masterstroke. I had to secretly poke holes in the condoms for 2 months to get her pregnant. A woman, no matter how brilliant and fierce, becomes as tame as a puppy once she has a child. I'll convince her to quit her job to take care of it. After a few years at home changing diapers, her brain will have atrophied. By then, I'll be well established as director, and Cora Lynn will have been promoted to section head. I've already won this game. Every word from Damien was like a poisoned needle stabbing my eardrums. I didn't feel dizzy or see the world spin like in a soap opera. On the contrary, my mind became incredibly clear, a terrifyingly cold clarity. I am Aria Montgomery, commercial director of the Valoria Group, the woman who has personally closed multi-million-dollar contracts. I am not the type of weak woman who falls apart, cries, or faints in the face of problems. Years in the business world have taught me one thing: in the face of betrayal, emotions are useless. Only reason can save you. "And what about Cora Lynn? What are you going to do with her?" Jake asked, with a mix of curiosity and morbid interest. "Cora Lynn is the light of my life, the woman I truly love." Damien's voice softened with a tenderness he had never shown me, not even in our most intimate moments. "She's innocent, fragile. Life has been hard on her. If I don't protect her, who will? Aria, on the other hand, is too strong, too independent. I feel pressured when I'm with her. I'll marry Aria to take care of the house and kids while I manage Cora Lynn's career. A man with multiple women isn't that uncommon anyway." I bit my lower lip so hard it bled. The metallic taste in my mouth reminded me this wasn't a nightmare, but the raw, cruel reality. It turned out his attention, his care, the chicken noodle soup, he made me his promises of eternal love. It was all a meticulously planned play to sabotage my career and pave the way for his mistress. He was using my maternal instinct to lock me within the four walls of a kitchen, to transform a proud eagle into a canary with broken wings inside a cage. I looked at the keys in my hand and then at the heavy limbo wood door. I could burst in there, throw a glass of wine in his face, slap him so hard it would leave a mark, and unmask his miserable true self in front of his friends. That would be the reaction of a normal hurt woman. But I am Arya. I never fight a battle. I'm not certain I can win, and I certainly don't let my enemy see me lose my composure. I took a deep breath, regulating my pulse. I turned and walked away silently in my flat shoes. The carpeted hallway muffled my steps just as I was swallowing the pain inside. At the front desk, the hostess greeted me with a nod. "Did you find your husband, ma'am?" I smiled. A perfect social smile without a single crack. "My husband is in the middle of an important business meeting. I don't want to disturb him. Could you please send a bottle of your most expensive scotch to room 608? Put it all on his tab, please." "Of course, ma'am." I left the club. The cold New York night wind hit my face. I opened the car door, sat in the driver's seat, and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. The face of the woman in the mirror was still attractive and defined, but her eyes no longer had the happy sparkle of that same afternoon. In its place was a sharp, deep gaze, like a frozen lake in winter. "Damien, you want to play the victim. You want to use our child to tie me down. Fine. You set this stage, and I will act with you until the very end. Except from now on, I'm rewriting the script. And the ending that awaits you, I assure you, will not be the happy ending you're dreaming of." I started the car. The Audi glided smoothly through the deserted streets, leaving behind the sordid lights of the Aura Lounge, and also leaving behind the blind love of a youth that had just died. The drive back to the luxurious penthouse overlooking the Manhattan skyline felt eternal. The yellowish streetlights cast trembling patches of light on the windshield. I gripped the steering wheel. The memories of the last 2 years played in my mind like a slow-motion film, each image sharp and painful. I met Damien when he joined as the Deputy Director of Operations at the New York headquarters. Back then, he boasted of being the nephew of the influential Pierce family. His educated, intellectual appearance and his humble, respectful way of speaking quickly won everyone over, including me. I was a 31-year-old woman at the peak of my career, but with an empty heart after several failed relationships. Damien's kindness and detailed attention were like a stream of fresh water for my arid soul. We started with coffees to talk about work, quick lunches in the office, and then moved on to romantic dates. Damien always played the part of the perfect man. He knew how to listen, to share, and above all, he always respected my career. He used to say, "Arya, fly high and far. I'll always be the safe harbor you can return to." That lie was so sweet that I drank it down without hesitation. 2 months ago, I realized my period was late. I held the pregnancy test with 2 distinct red lines. A whirlwind of emotions washed over me, joy and worry. Joy because at my age, having a child was a gift from heaven. Worry because the major project with Mr. Harrison's development firm was in its final phase, and the position of Department General Director was vacant, waiting for the right person. That night, I told Damien. His reaction at that moment moved me to tears. He froze, then hugged me tightly, lifted me up, and spun me around, laughing as tears streamed down his cheeks. He knelt, kissed my belly, and whispered, "Thank you, Arya. Thank you for giving me a family." He immediately proposed with a diamond ring that, according to him, he had bought by saving half a year's salary. The wedding was planned in a hurry, and that's when the subtle pressures began. Honey work is for life, but the baby is the most important thing. The first 3 months are very delicate, and I worry about you running around with business lunches and alcohol. Why don't you take a leave of absence to take care of yourself? Let me handle the money-making. I don't want my wife and child to suffer. That general director position is so stressful. If you take it, when will you have time for family? I'm afraid you'll burn out. At the time, I only thought Damien loved me, that he was concerned for our health. I hesitated. I seriously considered stepping back, giving the opportunity to someone else to build our little nest. In fact, that very afternoon before receiving Jake's call, I had drafted a request for a leave of absence to send to Eleanor, the CEO and my mentor. Thinking about it now, I let out a bitter laugh that echoed in the silence of the car. It turned out that all those sweet words, those tears of happiness, were nothing more than a masterful performance. Damien didn't want this child. To him, my son was just a tool, a chain to bind my wings, a hostage to blackmail my emotions and my career. He knew perfectly well that if I didn't voluntarily withdraw with my capabilities and the support of the main shareholders, he and his mistress, that Cora Lynn would never have a chance to sit in that seat of power. Cora Lynn, A name that sounds so fragile. I remembered that new employee who had been in marketing for 6 months, petite with an oval face and eyes that always looked like they were about to cry. Cora Lynn messed up everything she did. Her reports were full of errors, and she stumbled when speaking to clients. Every time a superior reprimanded her, she resorted to crying, lamenting her difficult family situation, her elderly mother and her younger siblings to evoke pity. I once warned Damien about Cora Lynn's incompetence, but he simply dismissed it, saying I was being too harsh, that the girl was young and needed time to learn. It turns out her learning time was spent in my fiancé's bed. The light of his life, his ideal love, the type of woman Damien liked, was the classic damsel in distress, who plays weak so men can play her protector, but who is full of ambition behind your back, ready to snatch what doesn't belong to. And her. The car entered the building's garage. I turned off the engine and sat in the dark for a few more minutes. I placed a hand on my belly. There, a tiny being was forming. It was innocent, but its father was too cruel. A ruthless question appeared in my mind. Should I have this baby? If I had him, he would always be the tie that bound me to that miserable man. He would use the child to disrupt my life, claiming his rights as a father, demanding part of my assets, fighting for custody. I would have to deal with the scheming, fake Pierce family forever. Besides, to bring a child into the world without being able to give him a complete family, to let him grow up with a father who sees him as a tool, wouldn't that be an even greater crime? But if I had an abortion, he was my own flesh and blood. Hot tears sprang from my eyes, rolling down my cheeks. It was the first time I had cried since leaving the club. I cried for that little life that hadn't even been born and was already a pawn in his father's hands. I cried for my blind love, and I cried for the painful decision I was about to make. I wiped my tears and recomposed my expression in the rearview mirror. I couldn't be weak. This was no time for sentimentalism. I needed proof. I needed to confirm the condom conspiracy Damien had boasted about. I opened the car door and got out. The sound of the door closing was firm, as if I were closing an old chapter of my life. The elevator took me to the 25th floor. The penthouse was spacious and quiet. I went straight to the bedroom and turned on all the lights. Everything was tidy, just as I had left it. The enlarged photo from our engagement shoot hanging over the bed seemed to mock me. Without even glancing at it, I went to the nightstand on Damien's side. Damien was very meticulous. He always kept his personal items in the top drawer. I opened it. A box of extra-thin Durex condoms was in a corner next to some vitamins he used to take. The box was open. Only 3 remained. I picked up the box with slightly trembling hands, took it to the bathroom, and filled the sink with water. Under the bright, glaring white light, the silence was so absolute, I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. I opened the wrapper of the first condom. It looked completely normal, smooth, with no suspicious signs. I turned on the faucet and let water flow into it. It swelled like a small water balloon. I held my breath, watching. 1 second, 2 seconds, tick-tock. Tiny droplets of water began to seep through the tip, not in one place, but in 3 or 4 minuscule, precise holes, clearly made with a sharp object like a needle. I tried the second and then the third. The result was identical. They were all subtly punctured. Without a close inspection with water, it would be impossible to detect with the naked eye. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't an accident. It was a calculated, meticulous plot down to the last detail. Damien had planned this for a long time, patiently executing it every day, just waiting for me, his prey, to fall into the trap. He not only wanted to destroy my career, but he also wanted to manipulate my body, my autonomy. He disregarded my reproductive health, disregarded the child's future, all to achieve his despicable goal of promotion. I looked at the broken condoms in the sink, the water dripping the images of Damien, carefully giving me vitamins, helping me walk, caressing my belly, appearing like scenes from a horror movie. Behind that intellectual smile hid the heart of a snake. I gathered all the evidence, threw it in the trash, and washed my hands with soap, scrubbing so hard my skin turned red. I wanted to wash away any trace, any filth related to that man. Back in the bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and picked up my phone. It was midnight. I sent a message to Eleanor, the CEO. "Eleanor, I need to see you urgently tomorrow. It's not about work, it's personal. I need your help." Eleanor replied instantly. It seemed she wasn't sleeping either. "Of course, Arya. 8 a.m. at our usual coffee shop. It's serious. Very serious. It affects my survival," I replied curtly. Then I opened my contacts and looked up the number of a prestigious private gynecological clinic. I stared at the numbers for a long time. Reason told me to call, but my mother's heart twisted in pain. But then the image of Damien's smug face at the club flashed back in my mind. Arya will become as tame as a puppy. No, I am not a puppy. I am a wolf, and a wolf never lets others decide her fate. I made an appointment with a specialist for the next afternoon, the reason consultation on pregnancy termination. Once everything was done, I lay down, but I couldn't sleep. I opened my personal safe and took out my savings books and the deed to the house. I bought this penthouse before I met him. It's solely in my name. The car is also mine, and the money in my account is the fruit of 10 years of hard work. Damien hadn't contributed a single cent aside from some tacky gifts bought with his bonuses, which were probably also embezzled from the company. Luckily, we weren't legally married yet. He wanted to wait until the pregnancy was more advanced, or until he got promoted to have a proper wedding. His calculated indecisiveness had unintentionally become my escape route. The only bond now was the baby and the fictitious title of Fiancé. Around 2 a.m. I heard the door open. Damien was back. I closed my eyes, pretending to be fast asleep. His hesitant steps entered the room. A strong smell of alcohol filled the air. He stood by the bed, looking at me for a while. I could feel his gaze. It was no longer that of a lover, but of a hunter, observing his prey caught in the net. He leaned down and gave me a light kiss on the forehead, whispering in his fake slurred voice, "Sleep well, my sweet, naive little wife. Thanks for clearing the way for me." Then he went to the bathroom. The sound of running water drowned out the grinding of my teeth in the dark. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I carefully applied my makeup, hiding the dark circles, and chose a burgundy power suit, a color Damien disliked because he said it was too aggressive. Damien was still sleeping like a log, his mouth open, a posture I once found endearing. I looked at him one last time without a trace of affection. "Wake up, honey. Time for work." I shook his shoulder gently with a sweet but icy voice. "I'm going to submit my leave of absence request today, just like you wanted. Are you happy?" Damien sat up still, half asleep, but his eyes lit up at my words. "Really, my love, that's the right decision. Rest at home and get strong. I'll take care of everything at the office." "Yes, I'll let you take care of it," I smiled. A smile as sharp as a razor. "And you'd better do a good job, because from now on you'll have to fight hard to keep your position." Damien looked at me confused, not understanding my jab. He thought I was joking, so he laughed and hugged me for a kiss. I dodged him gracefully and grabbed my purse. "I'm going to see Eleanor. Goodbye." I walked out the door with my back straight and my head held high. The real war had just begun, and this Arya Montgomery, once she enters a battle, only knows victory, never a draw, and certainly not defeat. The coffee shop, hidden in a small alley shaded by century-old trees, was our usual refuge from the office bustle. Eleanor was already there. A steaming latte sat on the table. She was 5 years my senior, and the serene beauty of a successful woman emanated from her calm demeanor and intelligent gaze. I sat across from her and, without preamble, placed the leave of absence request on the table. "Have you really decided to quit?" Eleanor frowned, glancing at the document. "The Harrison project is at its most critical point. Without you, I'm afraid Damien won't be able to handle it." "I don't just want the leave." I looked her directly in the eyes, my voice firm. "I want you to approve this request immediately and announce it in this morning's meeting." "Arya, are you hiding something from me?" Eleanor set the paper aside, scrutinizing me. "Knowing you, you'd never leave a job half done just because of morning sickness. This has to be about Damien." I was silent for a moment, then I took out my phone, opened the photo of the pierced condoms, and showed it to her. I told her the whole story from the club, from Damien's humiliating words to the despicable plan he had concocted to get me out of the way and install his mistress in my place. By the time I finished, Eleanor's face was flushed with anger. She gripped her coffee mug so tightly her knuckles turned white. "That son of a bitch," she seethed. "I can't believe he's so despicable. What does he think we are, incubators, tools for his promotion?" "That's exactly why I need your help," I said with surprising calm. "I want you to approve my leave. I want Damien and Cora Lynn to think their plan has worked perfectly. I want them to gloat, to let their guard down and make fatal mistakes." "What are you planning to do?" Eleanor asked, her concern giving way to curiosity. "Take one step back to take 3 steps forward," I sketched a half smile. "I'm retreating to the background, but I'm not letting go of the reins. I'll keep working, but from the shadows. I need you to make sure the contract with Mr. Harrison doesn't get signed if I'm not the representative. Damien will try everything to get Cora Lynn to take over my clients, and that will be the moment we let her dig her own grave. Eleanor thought for a moment, then nodded with determination. All right, I'm with you. I've been fed up with Damien's arrogance and incompetence for a while, but out of respect for you and the Pierce family connection, I've turned a blind eye. This time he's finished. There's one more thing. I hesitated for a second. This afternoon, I'm going to the clinic to terminate the pregnancy. The atmosphere grew heavy. Eleanor looked at me with compassion and took my cold hand. Have you thought this through, Arya? The baby isn't to blame. I know. I swallowed a bitter lump in my throat. But I can't bring a child into this world to become a weapon of revenge or the chain that ties me to a miserable man. I want to cut all ties with Damien Suffer once and be done with it forever. Eleanor squeezed my hand. Her firm gaze gave me strength. I respect your decision. Whatever you do, I'm on your side. You take care of yourself and get your strength back. I'll handle things at the office. I'll play my part perfectly. Thank you, Eleanor. I smiled, feeling a little lighter. So, it's settled. This morning in the meeting, I'll pretend to be sorry, but I'll say that for your health, I'm forced to accept, and I'll make sure to emphasize that your entire portfolio of VIP clients will be managed by Damien and Cora Lynn. Don't worry, I'll play along perfectly, Eleanor winked, regaining her usual sharpness. Get ready for a good show. Leaving the coffee shop, I felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had an ally, the most powerful and influential one in the company. Now it was time to return to the Wolf's Den to begin my performance. I walked into the conference room at 9 a.m. sharp. The murmur of conversations immediately died down upon my arrival. Damien was presiding at the head of the table, as Eleanor hadn't arrived yet. His eyes shone with self-satisfaction, but his mouth still feigned concern. Arya, if you're tired, you should stay home. Don't push yourself by coming to the office. I didn't answer him. I went straight to my usual seat, to the right of the CEO's chair. Cora Lynn, sitting in a corner of the table, glanced at me before shooting a complicit look at Damien. The door opened, and Eleanor entered with her usual air of authority. Everyone stood up. Eleanor gestured for us to sit and got straight to the point. Today I have an important announcement to make, Eleanor said, holding my leave request with a somber expression. Director Arya Montgomery, for personal health reasons, requires a long-term leave to care for her pregnancy. Although this is a great loss for the company at this crucial stage, management has decided to prioritize the health of our employees. Therefore, I have approved her request effective tomorrow. A murmur spread through the room. Everyone turned to look at me with a mixture of surprise and pity. I lowered my head, playing the role of a weak woman resigning herself to her fate. Thank you, Eleanor, and thank you to the board for your understanding, I said in a slightly trembling voice. I'm sorry I can't continue to fight alongside you on this project. I hope you'll all continue to strive to achieve our goals. Damien jumped up, unable to hide his smile. Don't worry, everyone. Even though Arya is leaving, I'm still here. I will take charge of the commercial department in her name. My wife has worked hard enough. Now it's her turn to rest. He deliberately emphasized the words, my wife, to assert his ownership and project the image of a model husband. I felt like throwing up, but I maintained a forced smile. As for staffing, Eleanor continued, her gaze sweeping over Cora Lynn, who was shrinking in her corner. Arya's workload is enormous. Damien won't be able to handle it all alone. Therefore, I propose transferring Arya's portfolio of VIP clients to Miss Cora Lynn Vance under Damien's supervision. Miss Vance is a young and dynamic employee, and this is an opportunity for her to prove her worth. Cora Lynn, as if she couldn't believe her ears lit up, stood up and bowed several times. Thank you, Miss Hayes, for your confidence. I promise to do my best not to disappoint you or Mr. Pierce. All right, Eleanor gestured with her hand. Arya handed over the files to Cora Lynn right after this meeting. When the meeting ended, everyone left. Damien stayed behind and patted my shoulder, whispering, See, even Eleanor supports Cora Lynn. You rest at home and take care of yourself. I'll tell Cora Lynn to stop by your office to pick up the documents now. I followed Damien's back with my eyes until he disappeared. The smile vanished from my face. He was in such a hurry to snatch my achievements that he couldn't wait another second. 5 minutes later, Cora Lynn knocked on my office door. She entered with false shyness, but her greedy eyes were fixed on the file cabinet behind me. Miss Montgomery, I'm here for the file transfer, she said in a low voice. Sit down, I motioned to the chair opposite me without looking up as I continued packing my personal belongings into a cardboard box. The entire client list and ongoing contracts are on this flash drive. I'll email you the password. Cora Lynn took the flash drive as if it were gold stroking it. "Miss Montgomery, I know you're sad about having to leave work, but don't worry, I'll take good care of your clients. Damien says, I have talent that I just need a chance to shine." I stopped what I was doing and looked her directly in the eye. Cora Lynn, being in sales, isn't just about drinking wine at business lunches and flirting with men. My clients are sharks. Do you think you have what it takes to play with them? Cora Lynn was intimidated by my gaze but quickly regained her arrogance. "Don't you worry so much. With Damien's guidance, I'm sure I'll do fine. Nowadays, talent is one thing, but what's important is knowing how to use your connections. You're very good, yes, but men get scared of women who are too strong. I'm different. I know how to please them." Her words were an open declaration of war. She was no longer hiding her ambition. She believed I was finished, that I was the loser, and that she no longer had to show me respect. Well, congratulations. I closed the cardboard box and stood up. "I hope you please them as much as you please my fiancé. But remember what I'm telling you. Sitting in this chair is easy. The hard part is staying in it. Don't let it be that when you fall, there's no one there to pick you up." Cora Lynn grimaced, stood up and walked to the door with the flash drive. "Thanks for the advice. Go home and make dinner. Your time is over." I watched her swaying figure and smiled to myself. She had the flash drive, but she didn't know that the truly important clients, the key contacts, weren't on it. The list she had received was an empty shell, or contained only the most difficult and problematic clients that I had deliberately left for her as a welcome gift. I left my office with the box in my arms. The employees looked at me with pity. I smiled and said goodbye. This wasn't an end, but the beginning of a purge. I would be back, and the day of my return would be Judgment Day for that adulterous pair. Before leaving, I stopped by the office kitchenette to pick up a personal thermos I had forgotten. As I approached, I heard giggles inside. It was Cora Lynn's voice and that of a few administrative assistants known for their gossip. "Girl, that Aria, she's so fierce." And in the end, Damien sent her home to raise kids. Of course, Cora Lynn's voice was shrill and smug. If women spend all day working and neglect their appearance, it's normal for their husbands to get tired. Men fall in love with their eyes. She thought she could hold on to him just by making a lot of money. Ha! Damien only saw her as an ATM. And the pregnancy, I heard Damien was pampering her so much. Pampering her, Cora Lynn laughed scornfully. It was all a strategy. Damien told me he had to do it so she would hand over power docilely, otherwise it would have been impossible to pull the chair out from under her. Now she'll be at home with her deformed, ugly belly. And Damien will have the perfect excuse to be with me. Blood rushed to my head. I grabbed the doorknob, ready to go in and teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. But reason stopped me. No, it wasn't time yet. If I made a scene, they would label me a hysterical, jealous woman, and she would once again play the role of a defenseless victim. I took a deep breath, let go of the knob, and made a loud noise with my steps. The laughter stopped abruptly. I pushed the door open and walked in with an impassive face, as if I hadn't heard a thing. Cora Lynn and the others stared at me, pale as paper. Cora Lynn was holding a glass of water and her hand was trembling so much that she spilled some. Completely naturally, I went to the shelf, grabbed my thermos, and turned to face Cora Lynn. She avoided my gaze, pretending to wipe the water off the counter. "Cora Lynn," I called her. My voice was soft but full of authority. "Yes, Miss Montgomery," she stammered, forgetting her earlier cocky tone. "You're right," I smiled and stepped closer to her. "Men fall in love with their eyes, but you forget one thing: beauty fades. Only intelligence and character endure. You used your beauty to seduce Damien to steal what doesn't belong to you. But are you sure you can hold on to him forever? Or when you get old and ugly, will he look for someone younger and fresher to replace you just like he's doing with me?" Cora Lynn's face went from red to white. She bit her lip, unable to say a word. And another thing, I leaned in and whispered in her ear low enough for only her to hear. "You thought you won. The game has just begun, sweetie. Enjoy your fleeting days of glory because the price you're going to pay will be very, very high." With that, I stood up straight and walked out of the kitchen, leaving a deathly silence behind me. I was sure the other employees would spread the story throughout the company. I wanted to plant a seed of fear in Cora Lynn's heart, an unease that would gnaw at her day by day. Those who do wrong never have peace. I went down to the building lobby and took a taxi to the clinic. It was starting to drizzle. The raindrops hit the window, fogging everything up. At the private gynecological clinic, lying on a cold examination table, the doctor looked at me with concern over her thick glasses. "Are you sure about your decision? The fetus is developing normally?" "I'm sure," I replied. My voice echoed solitarily in the empty room. I closed my eyes as the anesthesia began to take effect. A single hot tear rolled from the corner of my eye onto the pillow. Forgive me, my child. Forgive me 1,000 times. In another life, please be born into a happy family. Don't be my child again. In my induced dream, I saw myself in the middle of a desolate field. In the distance, Damien and Cora Lynn were laughing and waving at me. But suddenly the earth opened up beneath their feet and swallowed them into a dark abyss. I watched them fall without feeling a thing. When I woke up, it was already night. A dull ache in my lower abdomen reminded me that it was all over. The baby was gone. The last link that tied me to Damien had been severed. I left the clinic. The rain had stopped and the air was fresh and clean. I took a deep breath, feeling my chest expand. The physical pain would heal. The emotional pain would become a scar. I took out my phone and called Mr. Harrison, the CEO of the Associated Development firm. Mr. Harrison, it's Aria Montgomery. I apologize for calling you at this hour. I have something important to discuss with you about the contract. Yes, not as a representative of the company, but on a personal basis. Could we have tea tomorrow? On the other end of the line, Mr. Harrison's voice sounded energetic. Of course. I was just thinking of calling you. I heard you left the company. What kind of management is that? Changing leaders in the middle of a battle? I only trust you, you know. It's a long story, Mr. Harrison. I'll explain everything when we meet tomorrow. I assure you, you won't lose out. I hung up. I looked at the starry night sky. The light from a streetlight cast my long, lonely shadow on the sidewalk, lonely but proud. Tomorrow, a completely new Aria Montgomery would be reborn. No longer the naive girl who believed in eternal love, but a steel warrior ready to crush anyone who dared to trample on her dignity. Damien, Cora Lynn, just you wait. I returned to the penthouse as the clock struck 10 p.m. My body was exhausted after the procedure, but my mind was strangely lucid. The house was dark and cold as a tomb. Damien hadn't returned yet. He was probably busy celebrating his victory with his light of my life, or comforting her after the scare I gave her at the office. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the living room sofa and poured myself a glass of warm water. The streetlights filtered through the large window, drawing luminous patterns on the hardwood floor. I sat there motionless as a statue, listening to the ticking of the clock. Every second was a reminder of the pain and hatred accumulating inside me. The phone vibrated on the table, breaking the deathly silence. The screen lit up, displaying Damien, the name I had once saved with such affection. I stared at it. An ironic smile formed on my lips. Now those words seemed ridiculous and grotesque. I let it ring 3 times before slowly answering, modulating my voice to sound sleepy and tired. Hello, what is it, honey? Aria, where are you? Why aren't you asleep yet? Damien's voice on the other end wasn't one of concern, but a hostile interrogation. The loud music and laughter in the background indicated he was at a party somewhere. I just fell asleep, I lied without batting an eye, fidgeting with the glass. My stomach has been hurting all afternoon. I think I might be having a miscarriage scare. Did you call for something? Damien was silent for a moment. Perhaps the mention of the pregnancy made him feel a pang of guilt, but his voice quickly became more aggressive. And you still ask, what the hell did you do at the office this afternoon? Why did you go to the kitchenette to harass Cora Lynn? Do you know she's been crying her eyes out and threatening to quit? You're her superior, a director, and you're bullying a new employee. Do you think that's normal? His accusation was like a bucket of cold water erasing the last shred of hope I had for his conscience. His fiancé was at home in pain, worried about losing their baby, and the first thing he did wasn't to ask about her health, but to reprimand her for hurting his mistress. I took a deep breath, containing my rage, and kept my voice as calm as possible. Damien, I don't know what you're talking about. I just went to get my thermos and reminded Cora Lynn of a couple of things about her professional attitude. I've handed over my entire client portfolio to her. I have the right to demand professionalism. Or would you prefer I let her ruin the reputation I've worked so hard to build? Don't make excuses, Damien shouted. Cora Lynn says you mocked her, insulted her, and threatened her. Stop your stupid jealousy. There's nothing between Cora Lynn and me. I see her as a little sister. I want to help in her career. What you've done is humiliate me, do you understand? A little sister, I burst out laughing, a bitter sound in the silent night. Damien, does a brother poke holes in condoms to get his wife pregnant to clear the path for his little sister? Does a brother go out for drinks with his little sister until midnight while leaving his pregnant ailing wife at home? On the other end, complete silence. Even the music seemed to have quieted down. I had left him speechless. He didn't expect me to know about the condoms. Or maybe he thought I was just being sarcastic, but his silence was the clearest confession. "What nonsense are you talking about?" His voice lowered a hint of panic in it. "Who put these ideas in your head? Don't believe gossip. Everything I do is for our future, for our son." "Enough." I cut him off, feeling a deep disgust. "I don't need your explanations. Go comfort your little sister. I'm tired and I need to rest. Oh, and remind Coraline that tears don't improve sales figures. If she can't handle the pressure, she can go back home and play princess. The business world is not for the weak." "Arya, how dare you?" I hung up abruptly, not letting him finish. I tossed the phone aside and leaned back on the sofa, closing my eyes. The first round was over. Damien was beginning to show his true colors, impulsive and uncontrolled, when Coraline's interests were at stake. The more he protected her, the more obvious their relationship would become. More importantly, this blind favoritism would be his Achilles heel at work. I got up and went to the kitchen. I needed to eat something to regain my strength. The doctor had recommended I take good care of myself after the procedure. I opened the fridge and took out a container of lobster bisque, a gift from a business partner. Damien had wanted to take it to his mother, but I had saved it. Now I would use it to take care of myself. As I ate, I planned my next move. The meeting with Mr. Harrison the next day would be key. He was a man of principle who loathed falsehood. With a bit of cunning, he would become my best asset to turn the tables. The next morning, Damien arrived at 6 a.m. He tiptoed into the bedroom, reeking of alcohol and cheap women's perfume. I remained in bed, my back to the door, feigning sleep. He stood there watching me for a moment, sighed, and got into the shower. I opened my eyes, staring into the void. There was no more pain or remorse, only cold determination. Today I would officially lay my trap. I chose an emerald green silk dress and subtle but elegant makeup that concealed my pallor and gave me a sophisticated air. The meeting spot was a quiet, classic tea house in a secluded alley. Harrison's favorite place for business talks. He was already there, sitting before a fine porcelain tea set. He was a man in his late 50s with graying hair but an incredibly lively gaze that reflected the authority of a business veteran. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," I greeted with a respectful nod. "Arya, sit down, my dear." He put down his cup and looked at me intently. "You look thinner. How's the pregnancy? Why did you leave work so suddenly?" I was shocked when I heard. I sat across from him with an expression of controlled sadness. "Thank you for your concern. It's a long story. I took the liberty of inviting you today, first to apologize for not being able to see the project through to the end, and second, to talk to you about something personal, as if you were family." Mr. Harrison poured me a cup of aromatic tea. He looked at me intently as if trying to read my thoughts. "Speak, my dear. I consider you family. If something is troubling you, tell me and I will defend you." I took a sip to calm myself and began to tell him the story. I didn't do it with laments as Coraline would, but with the tone of a partner concerned for the interests of her collaborator. I told him how Damien had pressured me to leave work and put his mistress in my place, about Coraline's incompetence and lack of professionalism, and my concern for the project in which we had both invested so much. Of course, I omitted the abortion and the condoms. Those were details too intimate that might make a traditional man like him uncomfortable. I focused on the professional and ethical aspects. When I finished, Mr. Harrison's face hardened. He set his cup down on the table with a sharp tap. The audacity, he shook his head, indignant. "That Damien fellow seems like a nice guy, but he has a rotten core. Treating the company like his personal fiefdom and putting some inexperienced little girl in charge of negotiating with me. He's disrespecting me. I've tried to reason with him, but he won't listen," I said with a sigh and teary eyes. "He says that Coraline, being young and knowing how to handle clients, will do better than me, that with the pregnancy, I'm slow and clumsy. I'm just worried his grand project will be ruined." Knowing how to handle clients, Mr. Harrison let out a contemptuous laugh. "I need partners with brains and vision, not dolls who serve drinks. This project is worth millions. One mistake could be fatal." Seeing my opportunity, I slid a small envelope towards him. Inside wasn't money, but a detailed draft of the business plan for the second phase that I had prepared, staying up late before my leave. "Mr. Harrison, this is all my effort poured into this project. Even though I'm no longer in charge, I wanted to leave it for you to consult. I don't want my personal problems to affect your interests. I only ask that you consider it carefully before signing with the new person in charge." Mr. Harrison opened the envelope and glanced at the pages filled with data and analysis. He nodded continuously with a mixture of satisfaction and regret. "Excellent. Detailed, exhaustive, and very realistic. It's clear that only you truly understand this project. Without you, that bunch of incompetents will turn it into a disaster." He closed the dossier and looked me in the eyes, his voice firm. "Arya, I'll be honest with you. I've been in this business for many years and my word is my bond. I signed with the Valoria Group because of your ability, not because of the company's reputation or to do Damien a favor. Now that you're not there, I'm no longer interested." "I understand," I nodded. "But if you cancel the contract now, Valoria could sue you for breach of the preliminary agreement, and it would be a mess. I have a request. I don't know if you could help me." "Name it." "I want you to continue working with Damien and Cora Lynn," I said slowly. "But I ask you to be more demanding, to raise the bar to the level I always maintained. Let them see that sitting in that chair is not a game. Let their true incompetence come to light under pressure." Mr. Harrison looked at me. A sly smile played on his lips. He was an old fox. He understood my plan instantly. I didn't want him to withdraw. I wanted him to be my touchstone, my sharp blade to unmask those frauds. "Very well, young lady." He laughed heartily, slapping his thigh. "You want to use me as your weapon, eh? All right, I'll help you. I'm also curious to see how that little girl and this Damien character handle my reasonable demands. Let's see how long their act lasts." "Thank you so much," I smiled, pouring him more tea. "And don't worry, when this is all over, I promise to compensate you with an even more valuable contract. I trust you." He raised his cup. "Let's toast to the curtain falling on this farce soon. I await the day of your return." We clinked our cups. The sound echoed in the silence like a bell announcing the end for the traitors. I knew that from that moment on, Damien and Cora Lynn had unknowingly walked into a dead end. The news that Cora Lynn was officially taking over the South Manhattan real estate project spread through the company like wildfire. She walked around with an air of grandeur, giving orders to my former subordinates in a high-handed tone. Damien was always by her side, acting as her protector, ready to reprimand anyone who dared question his little mistress. I was at home, but my eyes and ears in the office were working at full capacity. Reports came to me constantly. Marina Cora Lynn came to this morning's meeting completely unprepared. She kept stammering and left everyone frustrated. David Damien just approved an extraordinary raise for Cora Lynn. The excuse is assuming greater responsibilities. Everyone is gossiping. I read the messages with a smile. Let them enjoy their fleeting power. The higher they fly, the harder they will fall. The climax of the farce came on Friday night at the presentation dinner with the key partner. Damien and Cora Lynn booked a private room at the most luxurious restaurant in the city to entertain Mr. Harrison and close the deal. I wasn't there, but thanks to Mr. Harrison's vivid account and the recordings his assistant secretly sent me, I was able to reconstruct the disaster as if I were watching a movie. The evening began smoothly, Damien impeccable in his suit, Cora Lynn in a low-cut dress and heavy makeup. But the trouble started with the appetizers. Mr. Harrison, following custom, raised his glass of red wine, a toast to this new collaboration. I hope Miss Vance will live up to Arya's standard and bring a fresh perspective to the project. Damien raised his glass, smiling, but Cora Lynn remained still playing with her water glass. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison," she said in a whiny voice. "I can't drink wine. It's too strong and bitter. I'll just have water." The atmosphere froze. Mr. Harrison was left with his glass in the air. His smile vanished. In business, refusing the first toast from an important partner is an offense, a sign of disrespect. Damien, seeing the situation, quickly intervened. "Please excuse her, Mr. Harrison. Cora Lynn doesn't handle alcohol well, and she also has a skin allergy. I'll drink for her." He drank his glass and was about to drink Cora Lynn's, but Mr. Harrison slammed his own glass on the table. "Mr. Pierce," his voice was icy. "I am toasting my business partner, the person responsible for my millions, not her escort. If Miss Vance is so fragile that she can't have one courteous drink, how will she handle the pressure of this job? Or when we go to the construction site, will she also be afraid of ruining her skin and stay in the car with the air conditioning on giving orders?" Cora Lynn flushed and then turned pale. Instead of apologizing, she resorted to her usual spoiled child tantrum, grabbing Damien's arm with teary eyes. "Damien, he's scolding me." "I told you I don't drink." That stupid gesture was the last straw. Mr. Harrison detested weak, dependent women. "Fine," he said, fed up. "Let's skip the wine. Let's get to the important part. Where is the business plan, Miss Vance? Present to me how you plan to develop the second phase." Nervously, Cora Lynn pulled a dossier from her purse, but her lipstick fell to the floor. She began to read the document like a parrot, but it was an old plan she had hastily copied with outdated data that didn't match reality. After 5 minutes, Mr. Harrison couldn't take it anymore. He slammed the table and jumped to his feet. Enough, are you making fun of me? The data is wrong, the plan is a rehash. Is this how Aria's replacement works? Has the Valoria Group run out of competent people? Damien, pale as a ghost, tried to calm him down. Mr. Harrison, please listen to me. Coraline is new and still learning. Then let her learn at home, he shouted, pointing at him. If you defend her, you're proving you're worthless too. Let me be clear, I am reconsidering this contract. I will not put my money in the hands of a bunch of incompetents. With that, he stormed out, ignoring Damien's pleas and leaving Coraline crying her eyes out. The luxury dinner had turned into a total humiliation. The next morning, Mr. Harrison called me. His voice was still annoyed, but had a hint of satisfaction. You were right, Aria. You can't work with those people. I gave them a lesson yesterday they won't forget. I've announced that I'm suspending the contract signing and demanding an explanation from the Valoria Group. Your company must be in a panic right now. Thank you for playing your part, I laughed, feeling exuberant. Now it's my turn to enter the scene. Maintain that inflexible attitude. Only agree to meet when someone with the authority and ability to resolve this comes forward. Understood. I'll be waiting for your good news. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was smiling, radiant, and confident. The time had come. Damien and Coraline had dug their own graves. Now it was my turn to come back, clean up the mess, and reclaim what was mine. I sent a message to Eleanor. The fish has taken the bait. Get ready to ask for my help. The game was getting interesting. As expected, on Monday, the Valoria Group headquarters was in chaos. The tension was palpable. Employees tiptoed around whispering. Everyone knew the multi-million-dollar project with Mr. Harrison was on the verge of collapsing. Meanwhile, I was enjoying a quiet breakfast at home with a cup of chamomile tea. From 8 a.m. onward, my phone didn't stop ringing. First the administration department, then Damien. Even an unknown number I assumed was Coraline's. I put my phone on silent, ignoring all the calls. I wanted them to savor the full extent of their helplessness and panic. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. On the intercom, I saw Eleanor with a feigned expression of concern. I smiled and buzzed her in. Good morning, CEO, I winked. You're here earlier than I expected. Stop acting. We're not at the office, Eleanor said, entering and letting out a sigh of relief with a mischievous smile. You have no idea the mess over there. Damien is white as a sheet trying to contact Mr. Harrison without success. And Coraline has been locked in the bathroom crying since this morning. And what does the board of directors say? What can they say? The main shareholders are demanding an emergency meeting to assign responsibility. They want to save the contract at all costs. If not, Damien will be fired immediately. It's your time to act. I nodded and went to my study to get a dossier I had already prepared. I have a meeting with Mr. Harrison this afternoon. Go back to the office and announce that you've managed to convince me to come back and help, but insist that I'll only do it as a special consultant. After all, I'm still on maternity leave. Understood. You're a brilliant strategist. That afternoon I met Mr. Harrison in his private office, this time in the lion's den. He received me as if I were his savior. Aria, you're just in time. The people from Valoria won't stop calling, but I've given orders not to put any of their calls through. I only negotiate with competent people. Thank you for keeping your promise. I placed the new contract on his desk. This is the revised draft with some more favorable clauses for you as compensation for the incident. Mr. Harrison glanced at it, nodding in approval. Very professional. You know how to balance the interests of both parties. All right, I'll sign it, but on one condition. Which is, this contract will only be valid if the person leading the project is Aria Montgomery. If the Valoria Group changes the person in charge, the contract will be automatically voided and they will have to pay a 200% penalty. I was stunned for a second, then smiled gratefully. He wasn't just helping me close the deal, he was handing me the sword to execute Damien. With that clause, he would never dare try to sideline me again. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I won't disappoint you. 20 minutes later, I left the building with a signed and sealed $2 million contract. The New York sun was shining, but I felt an immense inner coolness. I took a photo of the contract and sent it to the board of directors group chat with a simple message, problem solved. See you at the meeting this afternoon. The chat exploded. Applause and heart emojis rained down, but I knew two people were trembling when they saw that message. At 3 p.m., I walked into the main boardroom of the Valoria Group. I wasn't wearing loose maternity clothes, but an elegant, fitted black dress with a white blazer. I wore low heels, but my presence radiated power. The room fell silent. Damien, sitting at the head of the table, had a haggard face and sunken eyes. Cora Lynn was beside him, her head down, not daring to look at anyone. I walked directly to my seat and dropped the contract dossier on the table. The thud sounded sharp, like a judge's gavel. "The $2 million contract with Harrison Development has been signed," I announced, my gaze sweeping over the astonished faces. "Mr. Harrison has agreed to overlook our little slip-up, but on the condition that I personally lead the project." Applause erupted. The shareholders and department heads looked at me with admiration. Eleanor smiled, satisfied. Damien forced a smile and clapped with the others, but his face was a mask of pain. "Thank you, Aria, for your effort. I always said only you could solve this." One moment I raised my hand, my voice icy. "The job is done. Now, let's talk about responsibility. Who caused this disaster? Who was about to throw $2 million down the drain due to their incompetence and lack of professionalism?" All eyes turned to Cora Lynn. She trembled pale. She stammered, trying to make an excuse. "Stand up!" I shouted, startling everyone. "Are you a sales executive or a guest at a party? You go to a key meeting unprepared with erroneous data, and on top of that, you behave like a spoiled child refusing to toast. Do you think the business world is a daycare?" "I'm sorry, Miss Montgomery. I'm sorry," she broke down crying. "It's just, I was tired that day and I don't have experience." "If you don't have experience, don't be so greedy as to sit in a chair that's too big for you," I retorted harshly. "Do you know how many people here have sweated blood to get this contract? Your stupidity doesn't just sink you, it sinks all of us." Damien, seeing his mistress humiliated, stood up to defend her. "That's enough, Arya. She has admitted her mistake. Don't be so harsh. The contract was signed in the end." "You sit down," I turned to him, glaring. "You're not innocent either. As director of operations, you tolerated and covered up an employee's incompetence for personal reasons. You mixed professional with private with disastrous consequences. If it weren't for me today, do you think you'd still be sitting in that chair?" Damien was speechless, red with shame and anger, but he didn't dare to reply in front of the shareholders. He knew I had the upper hand. "I propose," I addressed Eleanor and the board, "the immediate dismissal of Miss Vance as project manager. Her demotion to an intern to learn from scratch, and a review of Mr. Pierce's leadership capacity in this matter." "I agree," said Eleanor, the first to raise her hand. "I do too," seconded another major shareholder. One by one, they all raised their hands. The decision was unanimous. Cora Lynn ran out of the room crying. Damien slumped in his chair, looking at me with a mixture of fear and hatred. I looked directly at him and sketched a contemptuous smile. This was just the first slap. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional pain I had suffered. The meeting ended. I walked out of the room like a victor, but I knew Damien wouldn't give up so easily. He would try to get revenge, or more despicably beg to get back with me to use me again. And just as I expected, he showed up at my house that night. At 8 p.m., the doorbell rang insistently. I looked at the intercom and saw Damien with a bouquet of roses and a bag of food. His face had regained its usual composure, but his eyes betrayed his calculation. I opened the door and stood in the doorway with no intention of letting him in. "What are you doing here?" "Arya, I came to see you." He offered me the flowers with a pleading smile. "You were incredible today. I brought you some lobster bisque to help you regain your strength. It's very good for pregnant women." "Thanks. I'm not hungry. Take it to your little friend. I'm sure she needs comforting." "Don't say that." He pushed his way inside. "I know you're mad at me. I was wrong. I was too soft on Cora Lynn and it affected the work. But you have to believe me, there's nothing between her and me but a brother-sister relationship. The only woman I love and want to marry is you." I stepped away from him, looking at him as if he were a stranger. Brother-sister. A brother and sister who sleep together, who promised to kick me out to put her on a pedestal. Damien froze, his face changed. He realized I knew everything. He dropped to his knees abruptly, resorting to his last trick, emotional blackmail. "Arya, forgive me. It was a momentary lapse in judgment. Remember our beginnings. The day you found me starving at the bus stop, it was Cora Lynn who bought me a sandwich and a bottle of water. She saved my life. I owe her a lot, that's why I wanted to help her. But my love for you is real." I laughed so hard that Damien looked up confused. He didn't understand why his touching story of the life-saving sandwich was so funny to me. "You're an idiot, Damien." I looked at him with pity. "You keep talking about your savior, the sandwich that saved you. But have you ever wondered why Cora Lynn knew you liked ham sandwiches? Or why there was a $20 bill folded into a heart inside?" Damien frowned. "What are you talking about? She told me she was just passing by." "Passing by my ass," I shouted, throwing a cushion at him. "The one who bought that sandwich was me. The one who put the bill inside was me. It was pouring rain that day and you were huddled at the bus stop. I felt sorry for you and went to buy you something to eat. But when I came back, I saw Cora Lynn talking to you. I was too embarrassed to approach, and I left. You woke up, saw her, and assumed she was your savior, and she had the audacity to take the credit." Damien was in shock. He stared at me with wide eyes, his mouth open. The truth was too much for him. He had worshipped an imposter and trampled on the person who had truly helped him. Is that true? Why didn't you tell me before?" "What for? So you could pity me," I laughed bitterly. "I loved you for your worth, for our connection, not for a debt from the past. But you're blind, a fool. You let yourself be deceived by a manipulative little actress." "Arya, I'm sorry. I messed up. Give me a chance to fix it. For our son, please don't leave me." I looked at his bowed head and felt infinite disgust. Even now he was using the child as a shield. I went to my desk, picked up a piece of paper and threw it in his face. "Our son, open your eyes and read." Trembling Damien picked up the paper. It was the discharge report from the clinic. The words, "voluntary interruption of pregnancy" in bold, struck his eyes. You had an abortion." He looked up, his face contorted. Why would you be so cruel? That was my son." "Because he didn't deserve to have a father as despicable as you." My gaze was like knives. "You saw him as a tool to tie me down, to steal my career. I'd rather suffer once than have my son be born into a world of lies and manipulation." "You're a witch," he screamed, lunging at me. But I was prepared. I grabbed the pepper spray I kept nearby and sprayed it in his face. Damien howled in pain, writhing on the floor. Calmly, I called security. "Security, please come up to penthouse 25. An intruder has broken in and attacked me." 5 minutes later, 2 security guards were dragging Damien away as he continued to insult and curse me. I watched him go with a frozen heart. The door closed and silence returned. I poured myself a glass of wine and went out onto the balcony. Below the city, lights twinkled. The first battle was over. I had won, but the wound was still open. However, I knew I couldn't fall apart. There was still the final act to come. The shareholders' meeting and the revelation of my true identity. "Damien Cora Lynn, just you wait. The day of your downfall is near." After that night, Damien practically disappeared from my life. He didn't dare come near my home again, partly out of fear, partly out of hatred. At the office, he avoided crossing paths with me, but I knew that silence was the calm before the storm. A wounded beast is the most dangerous. Damien was cornered. He had lost the child, his main leverage to manipulate me. He had lost Mr. Harrison's trust and his credibility with the board. And most painfully for him, he had discovered that Cora Lynn, the woman he idolized, was nothing but a fraud. However, instead of repenting, his greedy and selfish nature plunged him deeper into the mire. He could not accept defeat. He could not allow me, the woman he despised, to crush him. He needed a game changer, a spectacular achievement to regain his position before the shareholders' meeting at the end of the month, and for that he chose the most insane path: accounting fraud. I found out thanks to the surveillance camera system I had secretly installed in his office before my leave. It was an ace up my sleeve I never thought I would need, but which had now become my best weapon. On my computer screen, I watched Damien and Cora Lynn whispering in his locked office. Cora Lynn, after being demoted, had become completely submissive to Damien. She knew he was her only lifeline. "Are you sure about this?" Cora Lynn asked with a trembling voice. "Falsifying revenue is a crime. If we get caught, we'll go to jail." "Shut up, Damien," snapped, his eyes bloodshot. "What do you prefer, jail or begging on the street? That bitch Arya has the upper hand. If I don't get the general director position, my career is over. And if I go down, don't think you'll get away scotangent-free." "But the difference in the numbers is huge," Cora Lynn said, worried. "The actual revenue for this quarter is down 30%. And you want to fudge it to look like a 20% increase. The auditors will spot it immediately." "Don't worry, I've already taken care of the auditors," Damien smirked maliciously. "The head of auditing is a drinking buddy of mine. A nice stack of cash will make him turn a blind eye. Your job is to sign these phantom contracts. Pretend we just closed big deals with your family's companies. Since they have a small business, it won't hurt to use their name right. Coraline turned pale. She knew Damien was using her as a scapegoat. If it all came to light, she would be the one primarily responsible. But faced with Damien's threatening gaze, she didn't dare refuse. Trembling, she signed the false contracts worth tens of thousands of dollars. Me, in front of the screen, I sipped my bitter coffee. That pair of fools was digging their own grave. They thought money could buy everything, even an auditor's integrity. But they didn't know that Damien's drinking buddy was actually a man I had planted. I called an unknown number. Mr. Durand the fish has bitten. Accept his money, but keep all the evidence, recordings, messages. I'll need you as a witness at the meeting. Don't worry, Miss Montgomery. I know exactly what to do. I hung up satisfied with my foresight. Life doesn't give you anything for free. I had invested a lot of money and effort in building this information network, and now it was paying off. The following days, I remained silent. I acted as if I knew nothing. I continued going to the office, successfully managing Mr. Harrison's project, but without interfering in Damien's work. I let him have free rein, letting him believe he had fooled us all. Damien became increasingly arrogant. He paraded around the company, boasting of his fictitious achievements and promising extraordinary bonuses. People cheered him, but behind his back they shook their heads. Everyone suspected something was amiss. I watched him on his pedestal of lies and felt pity. He was like a moth drawn to a flame, thinking it was the light of success when it was actually the fire that would consume his life. 3 days before the meeting, the atmosphere at the Valoria Group was electric. Rumors of a change in top management were flying. Damien's camp was trying to buy votes while the neutral parties waited to see which way the wind would blow. I maintained a disconcerting calm. I went to the office, worked, and in the evenings I went shopping or to the spa. I wanted to be in top physical and mental shape for the big day, but my tranquility unsettled Damien. He had me followed, but the private investigator only reported back the boring routine of a single wealthy woman. That afternoon, I received a call from Eleanor. "Arya, come up to my office right now. A very important guest wants to see you." I was surprised. Who could it be? I tidied myself up and went to the top floor. When I entered the office, I froze. Sitting on the sofa was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a kind but imposing face. "Dad!" I exclaimed, emotional. Yes, it was Frederick Montgomery, the president of the Valoria Group, and my father. He stood up and opened his arms. I ran to hug him with tears in my eyes. Ever since I decided to hide my identity to carve out a future for myself, I had limited my meetings with him to avoid raising suspicion. I wanted to prove to him that his daughter could succeed on her own. "My foolish girl, you're so thin." He stroked my hair. "I'm sorry I let you go through all this alone. I know everything about that miserable Damien. Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to handle it myself, Dad. I didn't want to worry you." "My daughter's happiness is hardly a minor concern," he said seriously, though his eyes shone with love. "I was about to intervene, but Eleanor told me you had your own plan. But this time he has crossed the line. He has tarnished the company's name, and I cannot tolerate that." "Don't worry, Dad. I have all the evidence. At the meeting, I'll teach him a lesson he won't forget. I just need you to promise me one thing." "Name it. Let me be the one to unmask him. I want him to see that the one who defeated him wasn't the president's daughter, but Arya Montgomery, the woman he trampled on." My father looked at me, nodding with pride. "All right. My daughter has grown up strong and brave like your mother. I'll be in the front row, just another spectator enjoying your performance." We talked for a while longer. He told me that Damien's stepbrother, Ethan Pierce, an upright and capable man, had been secretly buying up company shares and had contacted him to collaborate. "Ethan will be a good ally for you. I've arranged for his appearance at just the right moment in the meeting." Leaving Eleanor's office, I felt full of confidence. I was no longer alone. I had Eleanor, Mr. Harrison, my father, and now Ethan. "Damien, what could you possibly throw at me?" The day of the shareholders' meeting arrived. The Valoria Group headquarters was decorated for the occasion. Luxury cars, shareholders, partners, and journalists filled the auditorium. I entered in a pristine white suit, a symbol of purity and justice. My presence captured everyone's attention. Damien was at the presidential table. When he saw me, he smiled smugly. With his falsified financial report, he believed victory was assured. Coraline was sitting in the back, hunched over. She looked haggard and frightened. The meeting began. After the customary speeches, the key moment arrived. Damien took the stage and presented his report. He spoke of spectacular growth figures and non-existent contracts. The dazzled shareholders applauded enthusiastically. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. We will now proceed to the vote for the position of General Director, with you as the sole candidate, the moderator announced. One moment. A firm voice echoed through the hall. The door opened, and a handsome, determined man entered, followed by a team of lawyers and auditors. It was Ethan Pierce. Pardon the delay, Ethan said, taking the stage. I am Ethan Pierce, representing a new group of shareholders that owns 35% of the company, and I have something to say about that report. What are you doing here, Damien stammered, pale. I'm here to expose your fraud. That financial report is completely false. The auditorium erupted. You're lying. You're just jealous of me, Damien shouted. Security, get him out of here. Calm down, Damien. I stood up and walked to Ethan's side. Mr. Pierce is not lying. I was the one who provided him with the evidence. Damien looked at me incredulous. His ex-fiancé and his stepbrother, his two greatest enemies, united against him. Arya, you betrayed me. Betrayed, I laughed. You are the traitor. You betrayed my love, the trust of this company, and your own conscience. Now it's time for you to pay for it. I signaled to the auditors. They projected all the evidence onto the giant screen. The fake contracts with Cora Lynn's trembling signature, the messages bribing the auditor, the recordings of their conversations. Cora Lynn, seeing it, fainted. Damien stood petrified, sweating profusely. He knew he was finished. Shareholders, I said into the microphone, does a liar and a fraud like Damien deserve to lead this company? No, everyone shouted. Insults and water bottles rained down on him. Damien collapsed, kneeling on the floor. At that moment, my father entered the room. I declare, he said in a thundering voice, the immediate dismissal of Damien Pierce as Director of Operations and the referral of this case to the police. And I am pleased to introduce you to the new General Director of the Valoria Group, my daughter Arya Montgomery. The auditorium erupted in a deafening applause. While the echo of the clapping still resonated, the main door opened again. A group of police officers entered. Who are Damien Pierce and Cora Lynn Vance? The lead inspector asked. Damien, seeing them, tried to flee but stumbled and fell. Two officers handcuffed him. Damien Pierce, you are under arrest for embezzlement, document forgery, and fraud. The sound of the handcuffs was his sentence. He looked at me pleadingly, but my face was like ice. Cora Lynn, who had just come to try to escape, screaming her innocence, but she was apprehended. Arya, save me. I don't want to go to jail. I approached her now, looking like a cornered mouse. Cora Lynn, I warned you. You chose the easy path by trampling on others. Now you have to pay the price. No one can save you but yourself. The police cars drove away. My father calmed the shareholders and announced a new era for Valoria under my leadership. Alongside him and Ethan, I looked out the window. The sun was rising after the storm. A new beginning awaited me. Epilogue. 3 months later, the case of Damien and Cora Lynn was sentenced. Both received prison terms for their crimes. Damien's arrogance vanished in prison. His family disowned him. Cora Lynn, for her part, was shattered, her future forever tarnished. Under my direction and with Ethan's help, the Valoria Group prospered. One day I received a letter from Damien from prison. In it, he asked for forgiveness, acknowledging that his greed had destroyed everything he had. I read the letter and put it away. I didn't forgive him, but I let go of the hatred. A year later, at my father's 60th birthday party, we also celebrated Valoria's success, now one of the largest companies in the country. Are you happy, my daughter? My father asked me. Very happy, Dad, I replied, resting my head on his shoulder. One day while driving, I saw Cora Lynn in the rain at the same bus stop where it all began. She was wearing a street sweeper's uniform, looking gaunt. The once arrogant light of his life was now a shadow of her former self. My heart ached. The hatred had transformed into compassion. I stopped, got out with an umbrella, and gave her some money. Here, buy yourself something warm. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to know how to get back up, she cried, grateful and repentant. At that moment, I knew I had truly closed that chapter. Years later, recognized as one of the most influential businesswomen in America, I was asked in an interview what my secret was. Never betraying yourself, I replied. Turning pain into strength. And have you found your safe harbor? The young journalist asked. I smiled. My safe harbor was my family, my work, my freedom. I glanced to the side of the set. There a man was waiting for me with a bouquet of sunflowers and a warm smile. It was Leo, a partner and friend who had been by my side for years, waiting patiently. I believe, I said, looking into the camera, that my spring has just arrived. We left the studio together. The morning sun shone over New York City. It was a new day. I am Aria Montgomery. I fell, I suffered, I lost, but I rose stronger and more radiant than ever. This is my life, and I am the only one who writes its story.